I apologise, everyone. I cut off part two of the videos halfway through a sentence due to coughing, due to all the smoke that's about because of the fires that are happening across New South Wales at the moment. So I apologise for that. Okay, so going back to where we were, and the quote, we got to remember Winston tells Julia, nothing exists except an endless present in which the party is always right. So there we have that motif of time. This time is just an endless present. There is no future, there is no past. So nothing exists except an endless present in which the party is always right. I know, of course, that the past is falsified, but it would never be possible for me to prove it, even when I did the falsification myself. After the thing is done, no evidence ever remains. The only evidence is inside my own mind, and I don't know with any certainty that any other human being shares my memories. And here we have the difficulty, the conflict between the individual human experience and the collective human experience. The collective human experience is being altered all the time because the collective memory is being changed because of the authentication of the past and the palimpsest. What you have here is then this question about the individual memory, and it calls to mind the earlier quotes and the earlier things where Winston himself had said that his memory was not satisfactorily under control. And when O'Brien tells Winston that he has a defective memory. And so we get this idea that, arguably mental health is being questioned here. And, for those of you still looking for a related text, you could arguably look towards a text that was about Alzheimer's or dementia and what it means for us as we age and we start to lose that memory. The short-term memory goes as we get older, and then we start to really doubt things and we doubt existence. And that brings us back to what Mark said in the first video that we had, where who we are is shaped by our memory. Our identity is shaped by our memory, our individual identity from our personal memories, and then our national identity from our collective memories. So what happens if we have doubt over that reality, over that memory, and the memory belongs to the mind, but now we've got doubt over the mind because, as he says, I don't know with any certainty that any other human being shares my memories. And, from what Mark has told us, psychology looks at the fact that no one shares individually those memories. We all perceive things differently. And so the existence and reality are really being questioned by Orwell here, and I think this now goes beyond the totalitarian to what it means to be human and to be controlled. And you've got to remember, Orwell is questioning not just Stalin's communism, but also Hitler's fascism and also British imperialism. He's questioning capitalism. He's questioning socialism. Like he's questioning all of it. He's questioning our reality. He's questioning our thought processes. He questions religion, and he also questions the loss of religion. You can argue that he is seeing a loss of hope and a loss of faith as part of the problem with humanity, and which is why we end up at the end of this novel in a state of hopelessness, because Winston Smith, as we've discussed in class, is the everyman and he is the last man, and that no longer exists. It's really important, and I suppose I'm not really answering your questions about memory itself, but hopefully giving you ideas on things that you should be asking about the text and what Orwell is asking us to do and what he's asking us to question, and what happens when we start to play around with that narrative, because memory is a narrative. It's part of storytelling. Storytelling makes up the collective experience. We tell stories to remember. We tell stories to shape the collective. Stories themselves contain the values and ideas of the time, and they shape the collective memory. So what happens when all of that is manipulated? And that gets us to here. We have an endless present, because we're told earlier that the past is brought up to date. Up here, the past was brought up to date. And it's brought up to date so that we have this endless present. And with this endless present, the party is always right, and full control is made. And then, so just one last thing as we go on, we have, for the moment, he had even forgotten the dial. All he wanted was to hold the photograph in his fingers again, or at least to see it. It exists, he cried. No, said O'Brien. He stepped across the room. There was a memory hole in the opposite wall. O'Brien lifted the grating. Unseen, the frail slip of paper was whirling away on the current of warm air. It was vanishing in a flash of flame. O'Brien turned away from the wall. Ashes, he said. Not even identifiable ashes. Dust. It does not exist. It never existed. But it did exist. It does exist. It exists in memory. I remember it. You remember it. I do not remember it, said O'Brien. Winston's heart sank. That was doublethink. He had a feeling of deadly helplessness. If he could have been certain that O'Brien was lying, it would not have seemed to matter, but it was perfectly possible that O'Brien had really forgotten the photograph, and if so, then already he would have forgotten his denial of remembering it, and forgotten the act of forgetting. How could one be sure that it was simple trickery? And this is the whole culmination of the memory. I'm just going to jump to the text itself, where that quote goes on. Perhaps that lunatic dislocation in the mind could really happen. That was the thought that defeated him. O'Brien was looking down at him speculatively. More than ever, he had the air of a teacher taking pains with a wayward but promising child. There is a party slogan dealing with the control of the past, he said. Repeat it, if you please. Who controls the past controls the future. Who controls the present controls the past, repeated Winston obediently. Who controls the present controls the past, said O'Brien, nodding his head with slow approval. Is it your opinion, Winston, that the past has real existence? Again, this feeling of helplessness descended upon Winston. His eyes flitted towards the dial. He not only did not know whether yes or no was the answer that would save him from pain, he did not even know which answer he believed to be the true one. O'Brien smiled faintly. You are no metaphysician, Winston, he said. Until this moment, you had never considered what is meant by existence. I will put it more precisely. Does the past exist concretely in space? Is there somewhere or other a place, a world of solid objects where the past is still happening? And that takes us back to the quote that we had earlier, that we talked about in one of the earlier videos when we're talking about memory. And so we have this whole questioning of reality, of real existence. So when you're exploring the book, you can't really separate the motif of time, the motif of memory, the rewriting of history, and how it all is being manipulated, and just what that means for both the individual experience and the collective experience, and what it means for humanity. So I think I have not answered any of your questions whatsoever, so I am sorry, but I'm hoping that I have given you things to think about and ways into the text that you may have not considered before. Think of ideas and values. What is it that Orwell wants us to think? What does he want us to question? And what happens if the collective memory changes through the nature of storytelling, through rewriting history? Remember, his story comes from story. If the narrative is rewritten, if the dominant discourse is changed, how does that change who we are, our identity, our collective memory, and our individual memory? And how does it then change our own ideologies and values? So good luck. I hope this has helped. It's probably just opened up more questions for you more than anything. Good luck.